So today, very briefly, three of the most famous and most beautiful and most beloved of Buddhist texts: the mantra of the Dalai Lama and two sutras. Sutras are sermons by the Buddha or his disciples: the Lotus Sutra and the Heart Sutra. So first, Om Mani Padme Hum, the national mantra of Tibet, the prayer of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, incarnated in our time in His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. In Sanskrit, it's pronounced Om Mani Padme Hum. Entire treatises have been written about these 6 syllables. The Dalai Lama has preached sermons on this mantra prayer. Briefly, this is what it means. And of course, it invites you into it. It's not a left brain activity. It's like the rosary. It invites you into its rhythms. Om, the sound of pure creativity, the pregnant silence from which all things are born, the womb of the universe. Whenever anything is born, whether it was from the beginning of time or in time, in your life right now, a new life, a thought, an aha, a tear, a smile, a change of heart, a love. It begins, it originates, it comes from Om. Mani, the jewel of intention to remove all obstacles to the awakened life, arising from the faint whispers of the Buddha nature within, the will to see oneself in all things and all things within you. All things one. Padme, the lotus of wisdom, not knowledge, but deep wisdom, the truth of impermanence, emptiness at the heart of all things, the supple and soft lotus arising out of the muck and mud, shimmering in the sunlight. Again, all things one. Hum, the seed syllable of Akshobhya, the immovable one, the Buddha of insight, the indivisible one. It's the union of Mani and Padme, the union of will and wisdom, intention and insight. Om Mani Padme Hum, the jewel in the lotus, the sound of eternity within time, no heaven, no earth anymore, beyond all dualities. Chanting these 6 syllables with a pure heart, the Dalai Lama says, the lotus flower within you that slowly opens, the muck of obstacles to your freedom falls away. The jewel of your Buddha nature emerges, casting light on your path and others' paths as well. these 6 syllables, Om Mani Padme Hum, they capture the heart of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, non-duality. The Lotus Sutra is one of the great Mahayana texts. It was written in the 1st century in India. So think about this. As Jesus was alive in Palestine, and Paul preaching the gospel around the Mediterranean, in India, the Lotus Sutra was being written. The Lotus Sutra was being written at the same time the Gospels were being written. Originally, Buddhist practice was reserved for monks and nuns, those who renounced the world. It was called Theravada Buddhism. It became known as the Hinayana, the little raft. And it emphasized intense discipline to achieve the individual attainment of enlightenment. Those who achieved nirvana were called arhats. But as Buddhism evolved so that lay people, no matter their station or vocation, could practice it, a broader path emerged, Mahayana, the greater raft that emphasized the bodhisattva path, where upon attaining enlightenment, you forego the final step in order to serve others on their journey to their own awakening. And of course, in Tibet, the Dalai Lama and Vajrayana, the diamond raft, that's for another day. So here's the story of the Lotus Sutra. The Buddha sits on Vulture Peak, surrounded by a large audience. All my teachings until now have been provisional, he says. You haven't been ready for my highest teaching, the greatest truth. There's only one superior path, the Buddha-yana, the other-centered raft, the other-centered path of the Bodhisattva. Buddhas appear in the world for only one reason, not for their own sake, but to lead all beings to realize their own Buddhahood, the unmanifested Dharmakaya, the Buddha's truth body of wisdom and compassion, incarnated in time and in you. And then he begins to speak in 7 parables. The parable of the burning house. Once there lived a rich man who had many children, and one day a fire broke out in their house, but the children were playing, so were unaware of the fire. Even when the rich man pleaded with them, they wouldn't listen to him, so engrossed were they in their games. So he told them that outside there were 3 carts, one pulled by a goat, one by a deer, one by an ox, with toys and treats awaiting them. So they left their burning house. But behold, there was really only one, a great white carriage pulled by an ox and filled with jewels and far more precious riches than they had ever imagined before. The parable of the gem in the jacket. Once 2 friends, a rich man and a poor man, gathered at the rich man's house for dinner. They ate and they drank and they drank and they ate some more, and the poor man became drunk and fell fast asleep. Before the rich man had to leave for business, and while the poor man was still asleep, he sewed a precious jewel into the poor man's coat. The rich man left. The poor man awoke, and he left too, and wandered for many years in poverty, not realizing the treasure he had. When the 2 men met again, The rich man was surprised that the poor man was still poor, so revealed to him the jewel he'd been carrying with him all along. The Bodhiyana, the Bodhisattva path, the jewel in your cloak that you've been carrying with you all along. And where I really have wanted to get to today, the Heart Sutra. The full name of the Heart Sutra is Prajna Paramita, the heart of the perfection of wisdom, written in the early 3rd century in China. Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva of compassion, speaks to Sariputra, one of the Buddha's most influential disciples, and his message: beyond the 5 skandhas, beyond words, impressions, feelings, perceptions, even beyond our perceptions of the deities, while these are necessary, they're merely images of reality. They're not the realities themselves. No purity, no impurity. No yesterday, no tomorrow. No birth, no death. No being, no non-being. Non-duality, emptiness, one. Prajna Paramita, heart of the perfection of wisdom, is simply and poignantly stated. Form is emptiness. Shunyata, emptiness is form. Here's the image. Picture your life. At any point in your life, picture your life now. You're standing on the nearer shore and you want to reach the yonder shore. This could be a metaphor for your entire life as you look back on it, or it could be a change you want to make to your life right now, or some other part of your journey. It could also be a metaphor for the human and divine, life and death, or some other duality. The nearer shore and the yonder shore. How would you describe where you are right now, the nearer shore? And what is the yonder shore to which you'd like to go? Your raft is the rules, laws, your philosophy of life, your value system, how you've lived and made your way in the world, your past, even your religion, your gods, all the ways you make meaning in your life. That's your raft. And you set off on this raft from the nearer shore across the river of life, eyes fixed firmly on the yonder shore. The river, sometimes still, sometimes the current rough, tossed about, yet slowly, slowly you make your way across the river of life. You draw closer and closer to the yonder shore, the goal of your dreams. And as your raft brings you to the edge of the yonder shore, you step off your raft, the sand under your feet. You turn and look back from wherever you've come. You turn and you look back to the nearer shore from where you come, and aha, behold, it disappears from before your eyes, and you realize a truth, the truth. There was no nearer shore. You turn back again. There's no yonder shore either. And behold, even the river that separated them disappears as well. The yonder shore was the nearer shore all along. The beyond is here, not over there. It is here, and it is now. Prajna Paramita, The heart of the perfection of wisdom is that bliss, joy, fulfillment lies beyond the pair of opposites, beyond duality. The promised land you seek is the place you're already standing. Dharmakaya, it's called Dharmakaya, the truth body of the Buddha, is already yours here now. And isn't this the message of that great Buddhist movie, The Wizard of Oz? What did Dorothy and her friends discover? That the wizard wasn't a wizard, but they had to go to the wizard, through the wizard, to find out that there wasn't a wizard, that he wasn't a wizard at all. That each one had within them a heart, a brain, a courage, home, had within them what they were looking for all along. They already had within them the gift they were seeking. Buddha once said, "The Buddha is like a thorn you use to pull out another thorn. Once you've pulled out the thorn, you can throw both thorns away." Or the Heart Sutra, "The Buddha is like a raft you use to take you from the nearer shore to the yonder shore. The raft is necessary for the journey, but once you arrive, why would you want to carry that heavy raft around with you on your back?" So this is how it ends. This is Prajna Paramita, the heart of the perfection of wisdom. Buddhas, past, present, future. This is the sacred verse, the heart of the perfection of wisdom, the most luminous mantra, the truest wisdom that can put an end to suffering. So we sing out the praises that will bring us to the yonder shore. Gate, gate, para gate, para samgate, bodhisvaha. Gone, gone, gone to the yonder shore. I'm gone, gone beyond. I'm gone to the yonder shore. Illumination, awakening. Aha. And I want to play one more thing for you, and then we'll talk. So if you just give me a second here. So the Heart Sutra is fairly short, so I thought I'd play it for you as it's being chanted. Gate, gate, paragate parasam, gate, bodhisvaha. Gone, gone, gone to the yonder shore. I'm gone, gone beyond, I'm gone beyond to the yonder shore. So that's my Valentine's gift to each one of you this morning. Where would you like to jump in?
Michael, Steve, three things came to my mind when you were going through all this. Wow, over 6 years ago, we took a driving trip out west with our friends, and their name are Don and Becky. And we were at Canyon de Chelly in Arizona, which is on the Navajo Nation. And they like to sleep in. And so Don and I got up one morning to go watch the sun come up at a place called Spider Rock. Turned out to be a horrible time of day to try and photograph the rock, but as we were walking in along the edge of the canyon to a place we could see it, we're just chattering away and carrying on. And all of a sudden we hear this voice, and we stopped and we listened. And as we get closer, it was a native woman sitting on the rim of the canyon doing her morning prayers, we assumed. And that thought came to mind when you were talking about how all this was going on and being done when Christ was here and the gospels were being written. And I thought, I wonder how old that mantra was she was saying. And because I had no idea. But we got very quiet as we then passed by her and got far enough away that we didn't feel like we were disturbing her. And I just mentioned that because it happened so recently. The other thing was when you were talking about the raft and going across the river, and Charlene can remember this, we were on a river cruise on the Danube, and there was one point where I tend to watch everything when I'm doing something like this, and I noticed a guy wire that went all the way across the river. And I thought, what is that for? And I looked around and there was a ferry. And they had the ferry tethered to the guy wire. So all it had to power was to get from one side to the other and didn't have to worry about fighting the current, which was very strong. And I think of all of this from the standpoint of, and I remember back in my rebellious days, I thought of religion as a crutch and, what's that for and all that kind of thing. And I don't think like that at all anymore. And it's not a crutch, it's a guide. It's there to help us get through life and through these rough currents. And the last thing was, and this goes to the engineering part of my mind, along with the guy wire, is I did a lot of reading on fractals, which are these gorgeous formations, very precise, very exact, that come out of randomness and chaos. And anyway, those three things popped into my head while you were talking. And I just wanted to share them.
Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
I love the image of the guide wire, of thinking about a guide wire in your life.
The message, of course, is that, thank you, Gene, for that. The message, of course, is that as important and necessary as the yana, the rafts are, we get in trouble when we identify the raft, right, with the truth. That's the message, right, of the Lotus Sutra and the Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness and emptiness is form, right? Beyond the five skandhas, beyond even our perceptions of the truth is the truth. And that's mature wisdom, right? The Bible calls that Sophia. Which is feminine, by the way, right? Who else?
I think what I noticed, I was like taking notes as fast as I could because I like to try and hold on to it all until I receive your actual presentation. But the Om Mani Padme Hum, sometimes I look at things like this and I feel them very deeply and I become so very still. And I mean, I think I dearly and desperately need that because I have such a monkey mind. But I think then also I tend to be a passive person. I tend to be kind of shy and passive. I have things that I would long to do in life. So what I see this saying is it starts out, it does present as a finding that deep stillness. But then the last syllable seems to be the one, if it's the seed syllable, and you said that's where will and wisdom are one. and intention and insight are one, then that seems to be the place where action can come from too. So that was really helpful to me. The image of the lotus flower slowly blooming in you, that has action to it too. So
Thank you for that, Pam. As I mentioned in my email, this comes closest to the heart of Michael Spath's heart. But of course, I was raised with Christian metaphors and Jesus images. And so this is how I read, two of the New Testament scriptures that capture this are the Gospel of John and Colossians, and the letter to the Colossians. And so when Jesus says, in John 15 and 17, I think it is, that we're to be in the world and not of the world. Christians in the past, of course, really like to focus on that not of the world business, because as if their faith kind of jettisons them out of the world somehow, but really they're in the world. We're in the world. And the message of the Heart Sutra, I know I'm bouncing back and forth here, and the Lotus Sutra both, and Om Mani Padme Hum, the message of all three of these central Buddhist texts, mantras, are that the stillness comes, the awakening comes, the enlightenment comes, and then it propels you not out of the world, but back deep, deep, deep into the world, right? It thrusts you into the very depths of the world so that you and the world, you and the planet, you and the other become one. And slowly and slowly and slowly, that one not only envelops me and Jerry Lawson, but me and Jerry Lawson and Jan Gibson, and me and Jerry Lawson and Jan Gibson and Muriel, and then me, and your kids and your families and the animal world and even the planet itself. So the stillness, the awakening, but then bodhisattva, right? Bodhisattva propels you deep into the world so that you and the world become one, so that their joy is your joy, their pain is your pain, right? And yet, so you don't just take it on, but that you can take it into your own stillness, and so that you bring it all into your own stillness and into your own awakening. And that's the journey, right? That's the journey. So you can give it Christian metaphors and images. I came to it through my study with Dr. Yoshida, and then I was able to see more deeply into the Gospel of John and into Colossians, where it talks about the cosmic Christ, and other parts, other writings in the Church Fathers and Luther, and even in the contemporary Christian tradition. Thank you for that, Pam, and the rest of you.
This is Jan. I think about, I never come to your teachings from a scholarly viewpoint. I can only look at it from very personal. And the little bit I know about yoga and teaching it, they call yoga the physical yoga, where you're doing asanas and postures, and they say stillness and action. Even if you're holding an asana, there's so much going on within the body, and then your mind connects and your breathing connects. And it's that we're all yoked together, not just our breathing, our mind, our bodies, but then we're yoked to other people. So it just kind of starts in that posture and then expands from there. So I think that stillness, and what I've learned from that, just being still and realizing that you are enough. In fact, we often say that, and we do some of the chanting, and not in my classes, but in traditional yoga. When I go to regular, I call it a more spiritual yoga studio, we do a lot of chanting and the vibrations and being one with the earth. And it is the most awesome thing. But, just coming to know that you have it, it's all in you already, and you're part of everything and everybody means a lot, because I've spent most of my life trying to find something that was already there. So, whether you drink, whether you do drugs, whether you overeat, we're always searching. This brings us back to realizing it's here. It's here. It's really hard to find when you're searching other places. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, Jan, thank you for that. You remember when you would know this, of course, better than most of us, but when we were talking in our Hinduism series about yoga, the heart chakra, what's the totem animal for the heart chakra? The musk deer. And the image is, right, the metaphor is that the musk deer smells this sweet scent. And so the musk deer is bounding around in the forest and in the mountains and around the woods and all the rest, looking for the source of the sweet scent, not realizing that it comes from within the musk deer itself. So, and that's at the heart chakra, the realization of one's own sweet scent. Yeah. And that's, by the way, emptiness is form, form is emptiness. Remember last week when we talked about Zen, the Buddha takes a rose. Or no, it was one of his disciples, the Bodhidharma, takes a rose and plucks the petals from the rose, and you go deeper and deeper and deeper inside yourself until you pluck the last petal off, and there's nothing that remains but for the sweet scent of the rose that lingers. It's an emptiness, a nothingness that's not empty or nothing. And I know we're talking in metaphors and images here, but words fail at a certain point, don't they? Words fail. And so that's why the cultivation of the arts is so important. By the way, I'm transitioning here, forgive me. But why the cultivation of the arts is so important in our schools. And I don't want to get off into the education system, but because it activates this part of the brain that understands reality in a way that logic and reason can't. It breaks through, right? It breaks through the skandhas, right? The skandhas into a deeper perception that only music and art and drama and kinesthetic movement and all the rest can speak to us. Thank you for that, Jan, very much.
I'm being struck so much this morning by this notion of in this world, but not of it. This world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. It's suddenly occurring to me that people who have lived under enormous oppression, whether we're talking about the Palestinian people or African Americans in this country or Native Americans, those people who have for time memorial had to remind themselves that this is not the all. There is a world beyond what we're living in. They seem to have ascended to a place that certainly I've never been able to get to. And when I see hope in the world today, it's through some of the Native American people that you've brought to us. It's through a James Cone, a John Lewis, name the names, William Barber, the Palestinian people that we've met and grown to love. They seem like they have been able to transcend this world and come back into it with a message that is so much clearer than ours who have stayed here in the muck.
Well, and Linda, thank you for that. And so these, many of the people, not all, but some of the Palestinians that we've met, they come from and others, right? In this country, who you mentioned, Barber and Cone and others, we would say they've come from a centered place, right? And so in the Celtic tradition, of course, centering prayer has grounded people, but not as an escape from the world, but to, like I said before, to propel them back into the world, but you remember the Buddha sitting underneath the Bodhi tree, nothing can harm you if you're not there, right? From a centered place, a grounded place, right? Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Who else, please? Thank you, Linda.
Michael, I'm going to drop in again, second time. When Linda was just speaking, I thought the muck, I guess, at least in part, is the ego we develop when we're of a privileged class. And therefore, we use language for those people, Native Americans, African Americans in this country, Palestinians, as lesser than. And I was thinking earlier about the woman we had passed who was sitting on the edge of the canyon saying her morning prayers. We had deemed a savage way back when. And so we live in this very egocentric world, and we kind of speak to the rest of the world with pejoratives, and which is really a reflection on us not accepting ourselves in a way, I guess. That's the thought I have.
Thank you, Steve. There's no question, right, that there are many, many layers to peel away. Many layers to get from the nearer shore to the yonder shore, across the river of life. Our rafts, our meaning-making systems, so important, that help us to do that. But the Buddha is like a thorn you use, right? To pull out another thorn, the thorn of suffering. But once you pulled out that thorn, you can throw both thorns away. Who else would like to jump in, please?
Michael, this is Matt. Is there a way you can pull up that slide of the Dalai Lama's comments on Om Mani Padme Hum?
Let me do that, please. Let me just go back. I'm sure that there's a better way to do this, but just keep talking, Matt, and I will.
But the reason that when you were going,
I'm getting there. I know that there's a better way to do this.
There we go. When that quote came up, I was struck by the third line, dependence on the practice. And listening to the comments that Steve made and you made and Linda and Pam and others, it's the dependence on the practice. And we mentioned in terms of Celtic, in terms of the centering prayer, and in terms of whatever tradition, but it's in my mind, it's a way to still the monkey brain or the reactive brain, which is tied to ego, which has come up. But the dependence on the practice to then allow one to get closer and closer on the ability to be a warrior for compassion. And anyone I know who I really admire that does that well or teaches it, it seems like when you go back another layer beyond their teachings, they all are dependent. Those whose words that I value and lives and actions I value are dependent on the practice. And so that phrase there just really struck me as one of the most important parts of everything today.
Thank you, Matt. And of course, the practice is part of the yana, right? Part of the raft. So necessary, and yet, right? And yet there are many, many different rafts, but the most important is the Buddha yana, right? The Buddha yana, Bodhisattva path. Who else would like to jump in? Thank you, Matt. I return to the Heart Sutra often. I don't share this with folks very much, but I return to the Heart Sutra, oh, a couple dozen times a year usually. And just for its wisdom. It's kind of my own personal devotional. But it reminds us, doesn't it, that what a number of you were saying before, there's a timelessness. And the reason why I wanted to share this with you is because you know this. You've experienced these moments in time, but out of time at the same time. We mentioned last week, and when I was answering a question by Emmy and Pat about how they're close to their grandkids and how a hug from a grandchild. And all of a sudden, it's a moment outside of time, but within time. Right? A tear is shed because you feel so moved by a piece of music or a piece of art or by someone else's tear. And it's a moment outside of time, but within time. Or you fall in love all over again. And in that moment, when your heart is moved, it's a moment outside of time, but within time. Call it Christ, call it your Buddha nature, call it God, or call it silence. But timelessness in time, and then living out of that as you enter into back into time again, right? You all know this. You all know those moments. I can see your wheels turning about remembering those moments of your own life. And then you enter back into time again, strengthened for the journey, living outside of that eternal now. Yeah, no duality anymore. You can live out of non-duality, nourished and strengthened for the journey. You can live there. That's the message of all the great wisdom teachers, right? In the world, but not. Read John 15 and John 17 again, you Christians in here, or read the book of Colossians. It's the message. I'll send you these links to the Lotus Sutra, you know, the chanting of Om Mani Padme Hum. And it was written by this particular musical version of Om Mani Padme Hum was written by Lama Surya Das, who's a convert. He's a Western guy. I think he was a Jewish guy who converted to Buddhism, I think. And I'll also send you this version of the Heart Sutra. Each one's only 5 minutes. Any closing words, folks? You know, I didn't mention in class, today is Transfiguration Sunday for Christians. And I said before you all came on, the Heart Sutra, Transfiguration Sunday, Valentine's Day, they're all the same thing. Read the story of the Transfiguration again with the Heart Sutra in mind. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Gate, paragate, parasam, gate. Bodhisattva. Gone, gone, gone to the yonder shore. I'm gone. I'm gone beyond. I'm gone beyond to the yonder shore. Illumination, awakening, aha. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.